And Rusty, you can acknowledge Katie as being on the phone.
Good afternoon. It's 1:02 p.m. on Tuesday, June the 6th, and this is the Public Services and Facilities Committee meeting, which I'd like to call to order at this time, and also acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. We do have all committee members present. Councilmember Popson and myself are here in chambers, and Councilmember Myers is on the telephone with us due to exigent circumstances. Our first order of business basically is citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens' comments, Nicole?
No, sir.
Okay, no citizens' comments. We'll move on to approval of previous meetings' minutes. Do I hear any motion?
So moved.
Second. Any discussion or revisions that need to be made? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed, so that passes. We'll move on to old business. So we've got a couple of updates that we want to deal with today. Item 4A is update of the Isle of Palms Marina store, which is under construction, and also the parking renovations of not the parking lot as well as the store itself. So I'll turn things over to Desiree and/or Douglas to give us an update, and we can open the floor to any questions if we have that.
Douglas, chime in if I miss anything. So far as anybody can go to the marina and see, there's a lot of work happening. The one half of the parking lot of the marina operations is substantially complete. There's still some curb work that needs to be done. And they are moving on to the work on the middle section of the parking lot where additional parking is going to be available. An area has been designated for boat storage, and approximately 13 or 14 truck and trailer parking spaces are going to be accommodated. Obviously, as we have struggled in some of our projects in the ability of workers and contractors, they're somewhat delayed. They had anticipated being substantially complete by the end of last month. That seems to have been extended for a few more weeks. We maintain constant communication with Mike Schuler and his team, go to the marina at least a couple times a week just to put our eyes on it. There's a lot of work happening inside the store. I think that they're working through starting to bring in materials and inventory to start building the interior of the store. So that I think should be completed in about a week or so. The parking lot, we've received word from the marina operator that should be complete in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, weather dependent and all that. So we're hopeful that by the end of this month, the store is opened and the parking lot is complete. I think that's it. Is there anything else that?
No.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Popson or Myers, any questions or comments?
No questions. I've been down there a couple of times, Mr. Chairman, and it's looking good. And everybody's getting delayed with everything, so quite understand.
I did want to add that, and I've communicated this to council, and we've been putting it out on the website and social media, that during construction, the boat launch has been limited for resident use only, because the only trailer parking spaces that are available are the city's shared parking lot that we share with the restaurant, and those trailer parking spaces there. And we can talk a little bit more when we talk about the shared parking lot management, about how we're managing that and how it's been working so far. But did want to put it on the record that the boat launch is restricted to residents only. The marina operator has a person has a team manning the boat ramp to make sure that folks that do not have a resident sticker are not able to launch, because once somebody launches, they're going to find a place to put the truck and trailer, and so that's, I think, the most efficient way of managing that is managing it at the source, essentially. So that restriction has been extended. The original notices were June 1st when we anticipated, and they anticipated to be complete. That has been extended through mid-June, and that'll be the case until the parking lot is complete and the spaces are available for additional truck and trailer. Otherwise, the marina operations, the docks, the boat rentals, I believe the boat club as well is fully operational and working. It's just that because of the challenges with the space and the parking lot construction, we felt like it would be much better to regulate the boat launch.
Okay. Councilmember Myers, anything to add or comment on in regards to that?
No, I don't have any other information.
Okay, thank you. Well, a couple of things I would add. I was out of country on an extended vacation for a while, so I didn't get down there until this past weekend, and I've been down several times since then. And I've talked with Scott Toole, the general manager, Mark Welker, who will be running the deli there as always, and and gotten a good update. Had a nice tour. And they're moving as you've already said, Desiree and Douglas. They're moving as quickly as they can under the circumstances. And Councilmember Popson, knowing this business firsthand, knows that there are all kinds of delays that are going on in different areas. So, but I do know that they are doing everything they can diligently to get it open. They've got all the kitchen equipment installed. I don't know if it's all been tested yet, but they've got some really nice Vulcan kitchen equipment for the deli, state-of-the-art looking stuff. The outside decks look great. Inside, they got everything, getting prepared, ready to go. I even ran into the merchandisers, Molly Kennedy, and one of her assistants also yesterday. I ran into them down there, and they were showing me or talking to me about some of the schematics and things like that they have going on for to place the merchandise. And I think they have a lot of the merchandise already in place in other locations. It's just a matter of when it's ready to go, they can go ahead and get it over there and pop it right in there and be ready to go. So I know there's a lot of questions out in the community about when they will be open. So I think we just all keep our fingers crossed and hope that they can have good weather and finish up outside and and then keep working diligently on the inside and get that thing open as quickly as possible.
Did they get their CO?
No, not yet.
I don't think so. They should be very close if they have not.
Does the parking have to be complete 100% to get the CO?
No.
One of the problems they ran into, you might have noticed, Kevin, when you were down there, they've got a grease pit out front that needs to be installed. I guess they ran into a problem and couldn't find the initial drain line or whatever for that grease pit. It wasn't where everybody thought it was. So they had to dig, and they finally found it underneath the building itself. Didn't even know it was there. So they finally were able to trace that back, and so they should be able to get that work done pretty quickly too, I would hope.
Yeah, I would just add on that point, Councilman, that the Water and Sewer Commission did discover that there is a manhole underneath the building, which shouldn't be that way. And the Water and Sewer Commission did give us notice that if that configuration causes any problems for the tenant, the city, that they're not going to be responsible for that. We've passed that information along to Mr. Schuler. He didn't seem terribly concerned about it, but we are trying to set up a meeting to just discuss that situation further. I don't know fully what that could, what it could cause, what problems that could cause. I don't, but Mike was looking into it. I think he's going to get comfortable with it or find a solution. So that's a little bit of an ongoing issue related to trying to find that sewer line.
Is there an easement for that runs underneath the building?
No.
And apparently the manhole at one time was outside the building, but the building had been added on to, I guess, and so it was built over the manhole.
I don't know how long the lighthouse section has been on that building, but when that was built, it was built over a manhole.
Yeah. Okay. And I did talk to Tyler also, the dock master down there, and he did verify that the boat club and all of that is going very well, so, resident launching, boat club interest, boat club membership, all of that's looking very good.
Yeah, and we have been told by the operations team that most of the folks that have joined the boat club are Alapam residents.
right.
So I think that's good news, that
Yeah.
it's going to be enjoyed by folks that live here.
Yep. And just reinforcement to the public, it is free resident parking down there. You know, in
And-
spite of what the signs may say, if you've got a resident decal for the Isle of Palms or Wild Dunes, you can park down there for free.
That's correct. And the marina operations team also confirmed that they have new signage that will be installed once the construction is completed, that will in the signage will indicate resident-free parking. Right now, the signs that they have are temporary. You can see them on those sandwich boards. But still, it is free parking for residents that have a resident decal or Walden's resident decal.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we'll move on to item 4B, which is the update of the Isle of Palms Marina Shared Parking Lot Management, the MOU that we have in place. So Desiree, again, I'll turn that over to you and Douglas.
Douglas, why don't you?
Yes. So the MOU officially took, we entered into the MOU. It had a date that we would agree to have it actively watched. And we did reach out to the Islander 71 owners, and we agreed to start managing it a little bit early, maybe a week prior to what the agreement called for, just out of, just to kind of start getting the program underway and in place and get comfortable with how it was working. And I think we've now had a parking lot attendant in place for 3 weeks, I believe. We initially hired 2 attendants. Unfortunately, one of the 2 had to move, so we are down to 1 attendant, and we have been trying to kind of find contingency plans for that when that 1 attendant can't be in place. We have used a BSO one morning, and we've been in contact with the Islander staff about the possibility of their staff filling in situations where our attendant can't be in place. Additionally, there was always 1 camera on that lot. It was obscured a bit. So we have shifted the view of that camera and added a second camera. So we have an excellent visual of the lot. We are actively, our attendants are taking counts every day that they work. So they are working Thursday through Sunday. They're taking total counts and gathering data on the usage of that lot. In addition to that, we have the cameras, and we're taking kind of screenshots at 4 increments a day. So our hope is that at the end of this process, we will be able to kind of relay back to you all the usage, how it was used by trailers, how it was used by residents, how it was used by the restaurant. So I will say generally, from the city's perspective, the management's been going along pretty well. It has been very lightly used, I will say, up to this point. It's only been full maybe once, maybe twice in the 3 weeks that we've been watching it. And when it was full, it was only full for a short span, kind of at happy hour type time. So it hasn't, it's not fully being utilized yet. We do anticipate as the summer progresses and the weather gets better that it will be. There have been some hiccups with the manager being on site in a timely fashion, and we have been talking about that with the Islander owners to just come, to try to make good choices about how to push forward. So we're working with them on that.
Can you clarify that? What do you mean by the manager being on site
So
timely?
So we've been contacted, and this is obviously happening on the weekends when the city administration's not here. Police are periodically checking in, but we don't have a presence on the site all weekend, every weekend. So through the course of the weekend, we've been notified that, hey, the attendant we don't see the attendant currently.
Okay.
We reach out to the attendant. He, because it's been slow, been kind of 3 cars in the whole lot, after 4 or 5 hours, he will kind of mill around the site a little bit. So we're kind of working through being sure that it's being, well attended.
That they stay nearby where people may want to come in and just be right there and be a presence. I've
Yeah.
seen a car parked there, different cars.
Yes.
Which, facing out, so
Yep.
and if they've got the,
Yeah, the attendant's car broke down. We had to Uber to get there one day. There's a kind of a mini saga that goes along with, I guess, all of this stuff. But generally there is a car there and the attendant is right there. There have been a number of instances where the attendant is not right there. But it has happened in times when there's almost no utilization. It's raining or it's overcast, it's windy. So it's kind of tumbleweeds in the parking lot, and he's not been sitting right there. So we're trying to address that and get the Islander owners comfortable with how it's being operated, or change it, change to a different, we're kind of agreeable to working with them in whatever way however they want to, the level of attendance they expect from that employee.
okay.
It's a tough job. He's sitting there for 11 hours straight, and a lot of days there's, in the course of the day, there've been 4 vehicles go through it. So I could see where that would you get a little stir crazy.
And again, if you're a resident, you can park in there for
That's
free
correct.
in that shared parking area. So no problem there. Councilmember Myers, anything?
Douglas, who has access to that camera? Or the cameras?
The police department, myself. I think I believe that's it.
So,
Okay, that's not my only question.
I do think that Islander 71 has their own camera. I've heard mention of their camera, so I think they also have the ability to look at it, but it's not through our cameras.
And ours just, covers the entire shared parking lot. So that's, it may be that the restaurant's camera focuses on their exclusive lot. They may be able to see something happening in the shared lot, but the ones that we control have much clearer visual of that lot.
We're also, just for what it's worth, also have a camera pointing down the pier. So we're able to see. Unfortunately, it's not triggering us when it's getting used, so you kind of have to sit there and watch for it to judge usage, but we are actively recording that as well, so we can see what's going on.
isn't there one at the pier head too, kind of looking down at the floater? Thought I saw something.
I think that one was removed. I think the old operators did have that. I don't think we have one out on there.
We do not.
No.
So if memory serves me, the perimeter is supposed to be split equally
That's
between
correct.
Islander and us. And the last time I was in there a couple of days ago, I saw there was a bunch of Islander 71 signs on one side. Are we to the point where we have our half and they have their half?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
we
It's
should.
not been a problem because the weather's been
Yeah.
stinky, but.
Yeah, we should probably I don't count it and don't take notice daily of this, but we should. You're correct. The perimeter spaces, the way the MOU works, we count up the total number of perimeter spaces and we split them evenly regardless of the number. If there's 40 spaces out there on the perimeter, we'd get 20 and 20.
And then the
I-
way
I
that the trailer parking spaces in the middle work is between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. They're exclusive for Isle Palms residents with trailers, trailers who have and display a valid decal. And then after 3 o'clock, as those trailers leave, those spaces become available for vehicles of restaurant patrons. That doesn't mean that residents who park there earlier in the day with a trailer have to remove their vehicle and trailer at 3 p.m. They can be there until midnight. But as spaces become available, then those are shared with the restaurant.
Have we had any known issues in that trailer parking area at this point? Has there been anything?
So-
I don't need to know all the specifics if
Yeah.
we've had any, but.
I'll tell you things that have come up
Uh-huh.
so far is we have had construction trailers.
Uh-huh.
Well, so to back up a little bit, boat trailers, there are really redundant operations that are catching that because the the marina operations are not allowing people to launch unless they have the proper credentials, the resident credentials. So they're catching them at the ramp. So they're really kind of, in theory, keeping anybody from putting their boat in that would have a trailer that's not going to be welcomed into the lot. So they've already kind of been pre-vetted
Right.
by the ramp folks. But construction companies working on Goat Island, they're not going through the ramp, so that we don't have that catch there for them. They also are coming on days when we are not managing the lot. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're not managing it. So there have been a few instances where we've had construction trailers in the shared trailer spaces that should not have been there. We've had contact with the police department about what we should do in those situations, if we should ticket them, trailer them, tow them, ticket them. The marina operators are using a barnacle. It's another way it's kind of between a ticket and a tow. It's like a $300 removal fee. So that has never been to a point that it's kept either a resident or a restaurant patron from being able to park. So it's kind of not been an issue. It's been one construction trailer in the middle of an empty parking lot. But that has happened. We also have had, I received a picture of an uncredentialed truck and trailer during a time when it was monitored. I can't verify that it was uncredentialed, but the email I got said it was uncredentialed. I couldn't see it with my own two eyes to know exactly how that happened. So, there have been what I would classify as minor issues. Parking I don't think it's ever going to be 100% perfect. We're trying to make it as close to perfect as we can, but it hasn't been yet.
Okay.
But I will say that in our every Monday, one of the first things we do is go through the camera, and Douglas actually, goes and looks at it throughout the weekend. He has access to it remotely. And there are very few instances where, and I think you mentioned it earlier, that parking lot was completely full. There's always been space, whether it's vehicle spaces or trailer spaces, available practically all the time, which is good. It just means that there's turnover. But I guess to your point, Councilmember Popson, the weather hasn't been that great during the past couple of weekends, and I think that's the reason why. That's why we haven't really had any unmanageable issues so far.
Yeah, I think it's coming. I think those days are definitely coming.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be
Yeah.
not a square inch down there, but we just haven't had it yet. We hope that our management will be, ready for that and be able to manage it when it does happen, but it just hasn't happened yet.
Councilmember Myers, anything further?
One other thought.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
So does it,
Kevin.
since we're having somewhat of an issue with our attendant or lack of enough attendance, does it make any sense to reach out to Mr. Schuler? Because he's got a guy down there monitoring the ramp. Does it make any sense to reach out to him to sort of use him on occasions and work out some kind of,
So
have another set of eyes maybe?
we have, so in discussions with Islander 71 owners, they seemed to object to that idea, but I think our kind of way of approaching that is the first backup would be the city's BSOs, and then the second contingency plan would be their wait staff or their essay staff, as they call them. So we do have kind of backup plans, but up until now, it has not included the marina. Although, like I said earlier, the marina monitoring the ramp is really catching probably 95% of the issues already. So by association, they really are helping to manage the trailer parking in there.
And most people from off island wouldn't realize that it's totally different issue right there
Right.
too.
Right. They're just not even getting there. And I was there one day when a guy had driven from Greenville, tried to put his boat in, couldn't put his boat in, offered substantial payment to be able to put his boat in. You know, they just didn't, and they had to find another solution, which they did. But it never got to our attendant, that situation, because it was
Right.
caught by the marina.
Okay. Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, okay, I guess one other thing, do we plan to have, I know you have probably either daily or weekly phone calls with Islander in regards to the parking lot arrangement, we have the MOU, so are we just gonna stay on top of things as we move towards July the 4th and the peak of the season and see if we can get all these relatively minor issues ironed out?
Yeah, we had a call with them yesterday, so I think we talk to them at least weekly. And as issues come up, they don't hesitate to reach out to us, and
Okay.
neither do we. So we'll continue to do that.
All right, good deal. We'll move on if there's nothing else. New business, 5A, consideration of proposal from ATM, Applied Technology Management, for the engineering, design, and permitting of the marina dredging project. So Desiree, do you want to give us a little background on this? And
Yes.
what our proposal is?
Yeah, just a little context. So this is the project that the city has been working on for a while now. We, with the help of our lobbyists, we were able to secure an allocation of $1.5 million from the state budget, which we have received. We have those monies in on hand as of a couple months ago. We have to go through the procurement process for everything on this project. The first step was to issue a request for proposals to hire a firm to do the engineering design and start the permitting process before we can engage a contractor to do the work. So this is where we are in that process. We issued an RFP. We actively sought out companies that have done this type of work. One of them, indicated to us that because of the level of work that they currently have, that they were not going to submit. A lot of people are just so busy and not responding to RFPs. So to this specific RFP, ATM was the only proposal that we received. The city has a long history with ATM, particularly with work at the marina. So they're very familiar, and I think that's reflected on the price. The fact that they've done a lot of work already. They have a ton of experience on marina dredging projects, so we have no issue or concerns with their ability to pursue this process on behalf of the city. The city had budgeted or has budgeted $50,000 as a placeholder in the FY24 budget for preliminary design and to begin the permitting process. The entire proposal is everything up to construction management. So those monies will be anything in excess of the $50,000 that the city has budgeted will be covered by the grant that we have on hand of $1.5 million. So we recommend the city moving forward with a recommendation for approval of this contract so we can execute it. And then the first task, as you can see, will be some coordination with the neighbors, particularly Yacht Harbor and others that may have a need for dredging. We certainly want to facilitate a conversation, whether it's in the permitting process or in the actual construction, so that we can take advantage of maybe some cost savings and whether it's mobilization and demobilization and that sort. So we included that task as part of the scope of work that we wanted the firm, whoever firm we engaged, to incorporate that in those, in this process. So that'll be the first step, engaging with those partners and identifying whether there's any opportunity for some cost savings and for the city to incorporate any additional work that would then would be paid by those folks who
Right.
would just be utilizing any cost savings by doing it all together.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah, I have a couple, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So, any idea how long it takes to get a permit for dredging?
No, I will say I think if history serves us right, it'll probably be more than a year. There is a lot of
There's more to it.
there's a
definitely.
lot, yes, there's a lot that goes into it. Identifying, they used to call them sites, but they've rebranded that and now they're called placement sites. Identifying placement sites, so there's a lot that needs to happen. I do think that because it is the city, the one submitting the permit, it is better than an individual property owner getting approval from the Corps to utilize some of their placement sites. That's what we've been told by folks that do this all the time, that it should be easier for the city to get approval. If we don't, for whatever reason, I mean, there are ways around it, right? I mean, we can, it may cost a little bit more, but we can truck in, we can have have all the sediment trucked in somewhere else for disposal. So there are just other alternatives that may be available in the event that we are not able to utilize a core placement site, which would be ideal. But we won't know until we enter into those conversations with the regulatory and permitting agencies.
Is it possible, I know they do this with freshwater lakes, but selling the dirt, the muck?
I don't know, maybe the contractor who does.
I know
that
my
would be-
parents' neighborhood has basically gotten every single one of their lakes dug for free, more or less, because the people want the dirt. And it probably isn't the same with saltwater, but I don't know.
I'll certainly
If we're
ask.
talking, if we have to look into trucking it away, it might be worth it to see if anybody wants it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the contractors typically know if there are people that are on the lookout to buy.
Yeah.
To buy some sediment.
Well, as I read through this 30-page or so deck here from ATM, I mean, it's obvious that they probably have solutions for any question we could ask up here, basically, if it comes down to it. But in the background and, excuse me, the work that they've done, the resume they have, I mean, I just, to me, it seems like this is something we definitely ought to go ahead and move forward with and recommend taking it to council for
Do they
consideration.
do they take control of the permitting, or is that still on us?
No,
We
do it.
that would be included in the
Totally,
scope.
so that's not our issue at all.
Right.
So it is,
I mean, obviously, we're gonna have some involvement, but
so who? In terms.
ATM,
So they would be pursuing the permit application on behalf of the city.
Okay.
They would be preparing the documents and having the conversations with OCRM and the Corps. Yes, so they would be handling
We
all
pay
that.
for the fees for all of that,
Yeah.
yeah. But they
do
do
the
the work
legwork.
for us.
They do
Yeah.
the work. Yeah,
Right.
they do the hard work.
For a fee.
Two more questions, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
So this is a long-term deal, just permitting 3 years, let's say. By the time we actually get to dredging, Lord knows how many years that is. So is this price, will this price be locked in?
If we approve all the tasks today and engage and execute a contract for all these tasks, yes, the price would be whatever.
So there's
it's
no,
approved today.
and obviously we would have to go to contract, but there's no escalation because this is down the road.
What we have seen in the past, if for some reason the project gets incredibly complicated, much more complicated than we anticipate, and we know that it's going to be complicated, and they spend more time than anticipated in the permitting process, they may come and they would have to show that and justify why they need additional hours. I think that everybody's coming into this pretty much eyes wide open and that it's gonna be a long process, just because that's how permitting is with any project now, whether it's on the beach or drainage. So I don't anticipate that, and I think that they would have included, I would have expected the contractor to include an escalation clause if that was the case. I'll confirm just before we fully execute something that this is, we're executing this contract and until the work is complete, that's what, these are the fees and the scope that we are anticipating completing.
Got it. One more question, Mr. Chairman, I promise, last question. Is there any, I'm not sure where the dredging actually starts or ends, but is there any cost sharing if we're getting into the area of Dewey's or the Wild Dunes Marina? If, I don't know where it starts or stops, but if we are getting into some of their areas, is there some cost sharing we can ask them for?
Well, so the city's scope, the scope of our project is just the marina, and that was what was included in the bathymetric study. So it includes sections on the marina, the city-owned marina on the intercoastal waterway side, and then on Morgan Creek. The part of the coordination that we've asked ATM to also, and we included in the RFP, is if some of those groups want to have a need for dredging, that they could potentially be included in our permit application, but they would be responsible for the engineering costs associated with including that in their permit application. And let's say they have a need to dredge X number of cubic yards of sediment, then they would be responsible for the cost, the cost of actually removing that sediment. So we could facilitate them using our permit, being included in our permit and being included in the scope whenever we bid it out to a contractor to do the actual work. But the expectation is that they would be responsible for paying their portion. But we would be looking at, if none of them are interested or have any need to dredge, we would be doing just the portion on the city-owned marina.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and as part of the technical proposal, I think task one was local engagement and coordination. So they were talking about in that, with the, contacting, meeting with neighboring facilities on Morgan Creek, Dewey's Marina, Morgan Creek Marina, Wild Dunes, and facilitating those type meetings. So we ought to definitely advise them and recommend that we take advantage of all of that just for openness and, making sure that everybody's on the same page and during this entire effort.
Correct.
Okay?
Do we need to vote for a recommendation or?
Yep, I would recommend or suggest that you all make a recommendation to approve engaging and executing, engaging ATM for this work, and this would be something that we'll present to council at the workshop and at the council meeting.
Make a motion to make a recommendation to the full city council that we move forward with ATM on this dredging project.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
No opposed? All right. Is that all you need, Desiree, on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Item B under new business, discussion of timeline of the Waterway Boulevard elevation project and options. We wanted to include this on here for some discussion since we've had the Waterway Boulevard cart path that we've discussed many times over the years. So thought it'd be good if we brought this back up and have some open discussion about where we stand with that and what some possible options might be at this point moving forward. Desiree?
So I'll provide a little bit of context to facilitate your discussion about the timeline. The city engaged our grant writer last year to prepare a grant application for the FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program. We worked with them, the engineer, Thomas and Hutton, and some other stakeholders for the preparation of this grant application that was submitted last year. This is a FEMA grant, so we're competing with thousands of other people in the country, in the United States. It's not just a state grant. And the way that this works, the city submits this to the state office of emergency management, and the state office then submits that grant to FEMA. So that has happened. FEMA ultimately will make a determination of grant awards in the first quarter of 2024. What happens with what typically happens with grants is that no work associated with the project request may be able to start before the grant award has been issued. If you start any work, typically the conditions is that you are no longer eligible to receive the grant application. The concern is that this is a complicated project because, we started having a conversation about Waterway Boulevard, just improving the path, right? I mean, there's a lot of roots that are growing and creating tripping hazards, and there are areas where it is not as wide as it used to be. So we started having that conversation to, how do we improve the existing path? And as part of our drainage conversations with our engineers, came up like this is a great idea for it to be not only a project about improving the path, but use it as a stormwater mitigation project where we can utilize that path as a barrier, essentially, from tidal influence into that internal basin. So that's how the scope sort of changed, and we had Thomas and Hutton conduct a very preliminary design and preliminary feasibility study of that concept, and it seemed like something that was very a very interesting and doable project. But there is a lot of surveying, engineering, permitting, easements that need to be obtained in order to effectuate the project. So the concern is if the city has to wait until spring of next year to even start doing surveying, pursuing design, securing easements from private property owners of where, some of these drainage systems would need to be discharged into the intercoastal, that we're looking at a project where we can have a shovel in the ground 2-3 years from now, if we kind of use current projects from the time we start and finish. I mean, these are long projects. So I think that there are some members of council that want to at least entertain the conversation among the policy setting body about the cost benefit analysis, right, of waiting until next year to potentially receiving a grant from FEMA, which we don't know, right? I mean, we're very proud of our grant application. We think it's fabulous. We think it's a great project. Our grant writer has had great success in securing grants, not only for us, but for her other clients. But we just won't know. And whether or not the city wants to withdraw itself from consideration from FEMA and then use funds on hand to just start working on the project and hopefully start construction next year. So that's a little bit of context. I hope that's helpful. I have had conversations recently with a grant writer who helped us develop the grant and submitted it. Whether or not there are whether or not there's any flexibility in the city utilizing our matching piece that we would have to pay regardless, whether if we get a grant allocation, there's a matching piece. Could we use that matching piece to start some of the paperwork and engineering work, and whether or not that would then be considered, we may consider the project ineligible. So we're setting up a meeting with the state representative from FEMA to understand whether or not that is a possibility. If that is not a possibility, then I think council wants to have a conversation about, do we want to just do we want to say, okay, we've submitted a grant, but we'd rather have start progress and start work as soon as possible and not have to wait 3-4 years until there's, the project is complete.
This meeting that you're talking about setting up, I mean, what time frame would you know something about that by the time we have the next workshop? Or
I'm
would it be-
hopeful. I think that will
Yeah,
happen. They've
so
been
that would
they've
be
been
useful
so
information
responsive to
for us.
Yeah.
Okay, and the funds that if we decided to withdraw the FEMA grant, the funds that would be used are from where? Where do we have those funds at this point?
So the city received ARP funds last year. We received $2.3 million. Only half of it was allocated towards the public dock redo that's happening at the end of this year, hopefully. And so there's half of it, about $1 million to $1.1 million, that could be allocated by city council towards this project. Right now, the way that it's coded in the budget, it's for drainage work, nothing specific. But there is some money, that is a source of money that the city could utilize for that project. In addition to that, the city issued a GO bond a couple of years ago for the Phase 3 drainage project, which included the 30th, the 36th, and the 41st Avenue outfall project. We have about $600,000 left of those bond proceeds because 41st is being fully funded by another grant. We will always have needs for
Right.
drainage, so we have no issue that those bond proceeds are going to be utilized for drainage. But that is another pocket that could be another bucket of money that could be allocated towards the Waterway Boulevard path because it has a drainage component.
And the ARPA funds they expire also, right? I mean, we have to spend those dollars in a certain amount of time.
That is correct. There are restrictions to that. There has been some conversation as well at the legislature and in Congress as part of all these negotiations with the debt ceiling and there has been some conversations about savings, potential savings by clawing back unused or unspent money from ARPA or the CARES Act. That has not yet been decided. It has been talked about. So it wouldn't surprise us that in the future, Congress is looking for ways to save money, and that could be a source that frankly, it's pretty easy for them to say, look, if you haven't spent it in 2 years, you haven't spent it yet, you're going to have to return it.
Yeah. Questions?
What's the total estimate on this project?
The estimate that we submitted with the FEMA grant was about $1.1 million.
And that was $1 million from FEMA and $1 million for us, or is that the grand total?
That was the project total.
Oh, okay. So basically, we more or less have the money sitting there without the FEMA grant.
Yes, and we actually have the FY24 budget. We budgeted the expenditure of that whole project with a combination of capital projects fund, bond proceeds,
could-
tourism funds.
So we could start, if we decided to turn away from the possibility of FEMA, and one of the questions that I think would be nice to know from your meeting with them is, I know our grant writers done well and gotten us a lot of grants, but how about specifically FEMA grants? Like, are those harder to get? What are the odds of a city like us getting a FEMA grant? Things like that.
So she was able to secure the grant, the FEMA grant that Town of Sullivan's Island received about a year or two ago. She was the one who worked on that. And that was a capital project, a drainage and stormwater project, which is very similar to us. Some of our other grants that she's been successful at have been more about planning and master planning for stormwater projects. Those were much simpler, but she has been able to secure a similar grant for our neighbors. But again, I'm
I'm
never know.
inclined to do it sooner rather than later. Also, the fact that we're all sitting around here talking about how bad that sidewalk is
And we have been for years.
it needs to be fixed.
It's been like that since
Yeah,
85.
I think those are all good points, and I know Councilmember Popson wants to weigh in also, but we've been talking about this for years, and we really owe our residents and our visitors a better pathway, a much better pathway than what we have on Waterway. I mean, it's dangerous. I mean, whether you're biking, riding, or out with your children, whatever, it's a huge trip hazard, and it's narrow. We've talked about that
A lot of
before
places.
also. And if we waited to get a FEMA grant, and it's what really concerns me, what Desiree said, and if you wait to get approval on the grant, then you have to go through all the permitting process, which is going to layer even more time on it. We're probably talking about a price tag that ultimately is well above what we've got it estimated at now. Plus, we're looking at a timeline where you don't even get it probably completed within the next, 3 to 4 years, whereas we could get it done sooner. Yeah, so. Councilmember Thompson, I know you wanted to weigh in too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So with the FEMA grant, would starting the permitting process constitute the start of the project and construction, which would then kick us out of the FEMA?
That's what they want to find out.
That's what, so what they have told us is any work associated from the project cannot
my
start
guess.
until the project has been allocated.
That would be my guess.
What I'm trying to figure out is because there is a cost share component of money that the city would have to pay if we get the grant application approved, could we use that share to start some of the work and not make ourselves ineligible for the grant next year? That is a nuance that I'm trying to push to see whether that is even an option. If they say no, then I think council can decide, look, we just want progress on this and let's withdraw from consideration. I mean, it's a pretty high shot anyway, when you're competing nationwide for a grant. We believe it's a very exciting and project and that FEMA would be interested in funding, but we have no idea. We won't know we won't have any indication until at least spring of 2024.
So one other, I'm assuming we would have to get encroachment permits, part of the path, I would guess it would get into the right of way.
Yes, there would be need for encroachment permits from DOT, also
Critical
probably
is there
from
any-
the resort as well.
Oh, that's right. And is there any that touch any critical lines where we'd have to get
Yes.
OCRM?
Through the outfalls, there were some outfalls that would need to be created. So those we would need easements from the resort and we would need permit from the Corps as well and OCRM.
And all of that is something that we've, like, for 41st, I mean, we waited on some of those approvals
For over a year.
for over a year. And if we waited another year to get maybe a FEMA grant and start that process, and you'd be looking at the same kind of timeline for approval.
Maybe when I retire, Councilwoman Street. Maybe.
Well, I won't tell you where I'll be by the time you retire, but I think you can figure it
Maybe we
out.
should just start building the thing ourselves. I'll get my shovel.
Yeah. So what do you need from us at this point?
I think a recommendation to have this discussion at the workshop, whether or not the city wants to withdraw from consideration from FEMA, if that's the path, and hopefully I can have my meeting with the FEMA folks, with the state folks and our grant writer within, whether this week or next week, and next week is the workshop. I've communicated to them that I would want to have an answer by next Tuesday.
Okay.
So I will see what I can get, before then.
Okay. Do you need that in the form of a motion?
Sure.
Okay.
I think that would work.
Motion to bring it to the next meeting for discussion.
I second it. Any other discussion in regards to the matter? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nobody opposed, so that's, you got what you needed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Item 6, miscellaneous business. Now, we have our next meeting date scheduled for July the 11th at 1 PM, but I look over what we've covered here today. Old business, I would hope that, we hope that the marina store and parking renovation will be up and going by that time. And then, of course, the shared parking lot arrangement, the MOU, that's ongoing. This new business stuff that will be moving forward. At this point, I don't really see that we have a need for a meeting in July. So I would recommend we just kind of keep it, that we don't schedule a meeting for July, but keep it open if something
Yeah, if
comes
anything
up.
comes up, we can
Yeah.
add it.
Is that good? everybody?
Excellent idea.
Okay.
And just in terms of the marina store and parking, I think there is a desire from the marina operator to maybe have a ribbon cutting with the city once they're complete. So once that's done and we have an idea of when that would be, I will extend an invitation to all of council and to the public once we coordinate something with them.
Okay, and that needs no committee action anyway. Right?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's it. So no executive session needed, so I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.